Did you know every school, including yours, has a secret room with something you'll never believe hiding inside there? And I know what you're thinking, Tyler, how do you know that my school has this room too? Well, I can prove it by the end of this video. All you gotta do is picture this. You're walking through your school hallway when suddenly you see a teacher knock on what looks like just a regular wall. But actually, it's not a wall at all. It's a secret door that you never knew existed. And when that door swings open, you see that it's the entrance to a hidden room that has no lights on. But the weirdest part, there's an eerie red glow coming from the inside of it. So naturally, my friends and I had to figure out what was inside that room. And what we discovered there completely blew our minds. But actually getting inside, well, that's a whole nother story. Let me explain. This whole thing started on a random day during school. Me and my friends were just talking to each other in the halls, risen up girls as we walked past them. You know how it is. We'd make eye contact with them for half a second, then immediately look in the opposite direction. Now that I think of it, that tactic still hasn't worked yet, but hey, maybe one day. But in the midst of doing this, we randomly see one of the school's art teachers doing something really weird. What was she doing? Knocking on a wall. She's literally looking like a player in a video game when your controller disconnects and the NPC just starts tweaking out. So we're wondering what she's doing until randomly a door inside that wall opens and she walks inside of it. We were shocked because from the outside, you would never have any idea there was a door there. Like it completely blended in with the wall. So of course, my friend goes, "Did you just see what I saw?" "Yeah, did you know that door was there?" We realized we both just witnessed the same thing. That teacher definitely walked through a secret door no one knew existed. But the craziest part, when we saw her walk into it, the room she went inside of had a creepy red glow that made it look like there was a fire going on in there. This room looked like it had no business being inside a school, to say the least. So we walk over to the area where the secret door was, and at first glance, it really does just look like a regular wall. Same paint as everywhere else, same wall texture, but after a little bit closer of a look, we see a keyhole in the wall. It was barely visible unless you were looking for it, because it was painted the same color as the wall. So we're crouched down examining this keyhole like we're detectives at a crime scene, when suddenly the bell rings signaling that we need to get to our next class. But before heading to class, we agreed we need to find out what's inside that room. So immediately, me and my friends set up a time that we could meet after school to figure out how to do this. Now the teacher was pretty secretive when she walked in, and we never seen anyone else go in there before, so we were pretty confident that we weren't supposed to know about that room. Eventually nighttime came around and we were all playing video games together, discussing how we could get in there. None of us could stop thinking about that red room. Because what could possibly be in there that they needed to keep so secret? My mind was racing with all these crazy theories. Maybe it was some kind of teacher lounge where they kept all the confiscated phones that they never gave back. Or maybe it was where they stored all the good cafeteria food that they clearly never gave to the students. The more I thought about it, the more obsessed I became. I had to know what was in there. And I knew my friends felt the same way. So we started planning. We knew it was too risky to try getting in there during school hours while everyone else was watching, because we clearly weren't supposed to be in there at all. So we figured our best idea was to go in after school hours. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you would know that I had a friend who worked for the school, which meant he had a key to get inside the buildings. That was our way in. The second problem was the lock on the secret door itself. Sure, we could get onto the campus, but how are we gonna get into the secret room? None of us knew how to pick locks, but Jake did have an older brother who could open any locker at the school with just a paperclip. Whenever students would lose their keys, they would pay him $5 to open their locker, and he would do it so easily. So Jake said that he would have his brother teach him how to pick locks, and that would be our way inside the room. So there was our plan. One friend would get the school key, another friend would learn how to pick locks, and I guess I didn't provide any value to the team, but I wanted to see what was inside there, so I was going in no matter what. Jake spent the week learning lock picking techniques from his brother, and after a couple days, he thought he was ready to try picking a lock on a real door. So we decided we were gonna try getting into that secret room that night. Jake, you sure you can do this? Yeah, my brother says most school locks are garbage, so he thinks I could do it pretty easily. We met up at Marcus's house once it got dark. Jake showed up with a backpack full of random tools his brother gave him for lock picking. I'm talking paper clips, bobby pins, some weird little metal sticks. Like there was no way this wouldn't work. Once we got to the school, it was pretty creepy at nighttime. But once again, if you've seen my video where I was trapped overnight at school, you would know this wasn't our first time sneaking into school late at night. Literally all the lights on campus were off except for a couple ones in the parking lot. Marcus pulled out his dad's key, slid it into the lock, and just like that, we were on the campus. The hallways were pitch black except for these red exit signs, and it was completely silent except for the echoes of our footsteps. We made our way through the main hallway toward the art wing of campus, using Jake's tiny flashlight to navigate. What he didn't tell us before leaving was that this flashlight sucked, and the beam only went about 5 feet. So if there was something 30 feet in front of you, you couldn't see it at all. But we kept walking through the school until we got to the area the secret door was in. When we got to it, that's when things got really interesting. Even in the darkness, we could see the red glow seeping from underneath the door. It was faint, but it was definitely there. Whatever was inside that room was still on, still glowing, even at night. We never saw this glow during the day because the light of the school drowned it out, but during nighttime, you couldn't miss it. And this all kind of creeped us out because why would this red glow still be coming from here when school's not in session? It looked almost supernatural, like something bad was going on inside there. But Jake pulled out his lockpicking tools and got down on his knees in front of the keyhole. He had me shine the tiny flashlight onto the lock so he could see it while he tried to do the picking. This was where things got interesting, and not in a good way. Because when we first pulled up to the school, we had all the confidence in the world that Jake could pick that lock. He was acting like he mastered lockpicking since his brother gave him tips. So we figured this would be easy for him. But after 5 whole minutes of trying, Jake punched the door out of frustration, shook his head, and then said, "This lock is way harder than my brother said it would be. I can't get this one." What do you mean you can't get it? I mean, the lockpick isn't working. This isn't like a regular door lock. It's got more security or something. This made us want to find out whatever was on the other side of that door even more. Because why would they have a lock on it that was impossible to open? Like, what do they even have in there that they're that desperate to hide? I just hope it ain't my yearbook pics, I'll tell you that. He spent 5 more minutes trying to open that lock, but still couldn't get it. We even looked up a YouTube video on his phone on how to do it, but that didn't work. The lock was just not opening for us. So me and Marcus were like, well, should we just go home then? But Jake went, "No, I have one more idea. If you can get me a water bottle, I can open this door." Don't know why he didn't just bring one for himself if he knew that could get the door open, but now wasn't the time to ask questions. Me and Marcus didn't even know if he was telling the truth, but we just trusted him anyway, which we probably shouldn't have considering the fact that we trusted him to open the lock the first time and he couldn't. Like, I'm convinced bro had no idea what he was doing from the start. But regardless, we started walking around the school looking in trash bins for empty water bottles. We're looking and we're looking, but we can't find an empty water bottle in any of them. But as we're doing this, we hear a sound, and it's keys jangling somewhere in the building. We all froze like deer in headlights because we knew now someone was in the building with us and they were getting closer. The jingling sound was echoing through the hallways and we couldn't tell what direction it was coming from. Marcus said to hide and we all scattered like cockroaches. We wanted to just run out of the building, but we couldn't because the sound of keys jingling was coming from the only entrance to the building. So if we went back that way, we definitely would have got caught by whoever this was. So instead, we all dove into lockers right next to each other and shut them as quickly and as quietly as we could. The space in the locker was barely big enough for me to fit into because I'm so tall and nonchalant and a feminist and I love matcha. Ladies, hit me up. But anyways, it was so tight in the lockers that I had to pull my knees up to my chest just to fit in. If any of you have seen the video where I started a school lockdown, and I was freaking out because you would know why I get PTSD from being in lockers. So we're all just crammed in these lockers trying to be as quiet as possible. We know if we make a single noise, we didn't know who the person out there with the keys was, but what we did know is that if we got caught, just imagine what would happen if someone found out you were breaking into school with a teacher's keys. There goes my community college scholarship. The footsteps and keys jangling sound got louder and louder. Eventually, I could see a flashlight beam sweeping through the halls. My heart was pounding, and I was convinced that whoever was out there heard us earlier and they were looking for us. And then I saw him. Who was the person with these keys jangling? A janitor. He was walking slowly down the hallway, checking doors and shining his flashlight onto the lockers. He had this huge ring of keys on his belt that made noise every time he walked. You could tell by the way he was walking around that he wasn't just doing his normal janitor duties. He clearly heard a noise and thought someone was in here. So we stayed as quiet as possible as we're watching him walk around through these little locker vents. And then he stepped right in front of the lockers me and my friends were in. And for a terrifying moment, I thought we got caught. He literally flashed the beam of his flashlight at our lockers and I was convinced he could see us through the vents. But somehow he seemed to miss us. And then he kept walking. We waited probably 5 more minutes before any of us dared to move. Once we couldn't hear him anymore and we were sure that at the very least he wasn't in the same building we were in anymore, we got out of the lockers. So then we had a decision to make. We knew that if we got caught by the janitor, we would be in huge trouble. I don't know what the punishment is for breaking and entering into school, but I don't think it's good. I'm guessing the punishment would rhyme with something like suspension. Wait, actually that's not a rhyme. I just said the word with a lisp. I'm guessing it rhymes with the word muspension. Does that work? I don't know. You know what I mean. And don't get me wrong, I love getting a couple free days off of school, but I couldn't handle getting suspended. Like, I needed to get into a good college. I was trying to move my family out of the suburbs. So on one hand, I really thought we should leave to not risk getting caught. But on another hand, we already did a lot of the hard part breaking into school, and we were so close to getting the answers to what was inside that secret red room. All we needed to do was find a water bottle. But after a little bit of debating, we decided that the smart thing to do was get out of school while we can, and then just try figuring out what was inside that room a different way. We made it back to the parking lot without seeing the janitor at all, and we got in the car and quickly left. So what now? I don't know, but I'm not giving up. I need to figure out what's inside that room. Do you guys like my reenacting, by the way? Am I a good actor? Should I be an actor actor? No? Okay, I won't be an actor. I don't even know why I'm saying this. I'm so stupid. Anyways, I thought once we left, we would all collectively agree that we want to figure out what's inside that room even more now. But instead, it seemed like Jake was just a little sketched out. Instead of insisting that we need to get inside that room still, Jake would say, I don't know if we should try getting in there anymore. Obviously, they're trying to hide whatever's in there for a reason. It's not worth the risk. Marcus is trying to convince Jake that we can't give up and we need to find a way to break into that room. But then something hit me. We don't have to break into the room at all. No. We've been thinking about this wrong the whole time. We just needed to find a way to get in when the door wasn't locked. So I came up with a new plan. Instead of trying to break in at night, we were gonna do surveillance during lunch. After seeing the teacher go into that room for the first time, we knew people sometimes went in there at least. So the plan was to wait outside that room during lunch every day until we would see someone either go inside it or come out. And once that happened, we'd put something in between the door to make sure it doesn't shut and then sneak our way in. So during lunch, every day after this, we would do something called Operation Red Room. Did I do those quotation marks right? I don't know how you're supposed to do that. I just look like I'm doing a peace sign now. Arigato! Just focus, Tyler. I'm just kidding. None of us actually even called it Operation Red Room anyway. I just made that up to sound cool. But basically, Operation Red Room was what I just told you. We would wait outside that door during lunch, and when someone came in or came out, we'd put something in between the door and then make our way in once they left. Now you may be thinking, hey, but doesn't that sound boring? You're right. It does sound boring. But this is when the power of autism comes into play, because this was my hyperfixation. So I was gonna figure out what was inside that room no matter how long it took. We created this whole schedule. Marcus would watch the door on Mondays, Jake on Tuesdays, and I would do Wednesdays. Just waiting until someone either came in or out of that room so we could make our move. First week was pretty disappointing. Every single day during lunch, one of us would follow the plan, but unfortunately, no one ever came in or out of the room. But finally, the breakthrough came one day during my surveillance shift. I was sitting there during lunch, on my fourth PB&J of the day, by the way, when I saw someone I literally did not recognize go straight up to the secret door. But this time, it didn't look like a teacher. It looked like a student, which was really interesting because I knew the faces of at least most of the students at school, but I had no idea who this person was. So I'm watching their every move, and when they walk up to the secret door, they pull out a key from their back pocket, insert it, then quickly open the door and hop inside and close it. Just like the first time I could see into that room, there was a red glow coming from the inside of it, but they never opened the door wide enough for me to see what was actually in there. I immediately texted Marcus and Jake. Someone just went into the room. This might be our chance. So they all met me at the door, and once they got there, we were basically spawn camping it. And to put things into perspective, we were pretty much the only people in this building at the time. Like, no one ever ate lunch here, so that was probably why this was the time where people would go into that room. My friends and I are just sitting there, ready. The moment the person that walked in there was ready to walk out, we would be there to pounce and make sure the door didn't fully close before we wedged something in between it. I pulled out an eraser from my backpack, and we just waited and waited and waited. We knew that when whoever was in that room came out, we would look super suspicious if we were just staring at the door. So we pulled out a couple pieces of homework and acted like we were studying. That was the most studying I did the whole year, if I'm being honest with you. I was so nervous because this is what we had been waiting weeks for. We couldn't blow this chance because who knew when we would get another one. I needed to make sure that when that door opened, I wedged the eraser inside there perfectly. If my plan worked, the door wouldn't close all the way and we'd be able to get inside. The whole time we were waiting, I could hear whoever was in there moving around. But the weirdest part was it sounded like they were taking a bath. Like you could hear water swishing around in there as if someone was literally bathing. That just made me even more confused than I already was. I didn't know what to think. But just before lunch ended, I heard footsteps coming back to the door. The door opened and the student stepped out. He looked at us for about a second, but when it seemed like we weren't paying any attention to him, he just kept minding his own business. Once he turned away, I tried my best to sneakily put the eraser in between the door. It felt like the scene in Talladega Nights when I'm trying to get to the door with my eraser. It's like slow motion of me trying to put it in the perfect spot before it shuts. And luckily, we got it. The door didn't close. We waited until seeing this mystery student actually leave the building to try going inside. And when we finally saw him leave, now it was go time. This was it. This was the moment we'd been waiting for. We all just stood there looking at this slightly open door with that red glow coming from inside it. Are we really doing this? What if we get in trouble for seeing whatever is inside there? Like we clearly aren't supposed to find whatever they're hiding. Jake whispered, and I tried to calm Jake down and convince him it was okay by saying, Jake, shut up, bro. We're going inside that room, okay? We all looked at each other for a second and then agreed. We gotta do this. So I slowly opened the door trying to be as quiet as possible. And at first, I just peeked inside, checking to see if anyone else was in there. From what I could see, no one was. So I opened the door completely and the three of us quickly went inside before shutting the door behind us. The first thing that hit us was the smell. It wasn't bad, but it was just weird and chemical-like. The second thing was how dark it was, except for that red lighting that made the whole place look like a horror film set. And the third thing, which was somehow the most creepy part, was the fact that there were no windows in here. Meaning, when that door shut behind us, it was completely dark except for the red glow. Now, I don't know about you guys, but before this, I'd never been inside a room in school that didn't have windows. This room did not feel like it belonged in a school. Like, honestly, honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if Diddy popped out of somewhere to scare us, because that's the vibe the inside of this room was giving. But once we were fully inside and the door was finally shut, we started walking around. As our eyes adjusted to the dim light, we noticed something weird. Remember when I said we heard swishing around as if someone was taking a bath in here? Well, now we could see what was making that noise. There were buckets of water all lined up right next to each other on a table. And next to these buckets were a bunch of pictures that you couldn't see what they were. Now, this was really starting to feel like a room Diddy would be hiding in. Pictures that are blurred so you can't see what they actually are? After doing the full lap around the room, we still had no idea what it actually was. The inside almost looked like a surgery room for doctors. Like, that's the best way I could describe it. So you know what my first thought was? They're harvesting people's organs in here. That's clearly the answer. Okay, that wasn't my first thought actually, but I mean, I did think that. I'm not lying, but I would get the answer to what was actually going on inside here in a second, because as we're walking around trying to figure out what this place is, someone knocked on the door from the outside. We all look at each other in a huge panic, because if we get caught inside this room that we're not supposed to be in, who knew what would happen to us? We might disappear. So once again, we all try to hide. Now, unfortunately, there weren't too many good hiding spots in here, so we just crouched behind a counter together. We're sitting there, being as quiet as possible, hoping that the person who knocked on the door didn't have a key to get in. But after about 10 seconds, I hear keys jangle and be put into the lock. There was no running from it now. Someone was definitely about to open that door, and there was nothing we could do. The door opens, and it feels like we're getting flashbang with the light coming from outside. It's like when your mom turns your light on in the morning when you're sleeping, and we see the shadow of a person walk inside. It's just one, and they close the door behind them and start walking around. We're still doing our best mannequin impressions, trying to be quiet, but one thing about my friends, they can never follow directions, including me. So Jake tries adjusting his foot, but his shoe makes a screeching noise in the process, revealing to whoever just came in that there were other people inside this room. Right away, this person pauses, then looks towards us. They can't see us yet, but they're walking in our direction, and we all know it's about to be over. So then we figure, hey, whatever's about to happen,
there's 3 of us and 1 of him.
so we all pop up at the same time, and this random person flinches and screams. It was the same guy I saw go into the room earlier, the one that looked like a student, but I didn't recognize. And after he recognized that we weren't a threat, we were just scared, he goes, what are you doing? Hiding from you? Why? Because we know we're not supposed to be in whatever this place is. Why would you not be allowed in here? I don't know, maybe because this place has no windows, feels like a dungeon, and is only accessible through a door that only Sherlock Holmes could find. But then he goes, oh yeah, I get it. No, anyone can come inside here though. Okay, well, why does it have no windows then, and it's completely hidden from the rest of the school? And this was the moment where my friends and I got the truth on what this room was. And honestly, all I have to say is, me and my friends are very dumb. Because this guy goes, oh, well, that's because this is the dark room for photography students. What's a dark room? A dark room is just a place where we develop the photos we took in photography class. That's why it has no windows and there's red lights in here, because the photos will get ruined if there's any light coming from outside. And that explained why the water buckets were in there too, because you put the photo into the bucket and then you can see what it was. So what did this all mean? Well, it meant that after all this work, it turns out there's no Diddy dungeon inside my school. Well, at least as far as I know.